Welcome back to the Strategy Layer Live. I'm your host, Steve Tout, and today we're sitting down with Bill Kehoe, Washington State's Chief Information Officer, for a conversation that's literally been over a year in the making. Bill's career spans state, county, and local government, from leading digital transformation at the Department of Licensing to driving the vision for connected, equitable digital services across Washington State. In this episode, we'll explore how running and coaching shaped his leadership philosophy, how he built momentum for modernization without fear, and why cybersecurity, equity, and innovation all comes down to trust. So if you've ever wondered what it looks like to run toward impact, this episode is for you. Thanks for listening and watching. Well, Bill Kehoe, it has been a long wait to get to this point, and I'll be honest, I've waited a little over a year. I first thought about this conversation in early 2024, and I just had been brainstorming and collecting ideas, but I think your career has been evolving in real time.
Every day.
Yep. And so I've been thinking about what it would be like and what I would want to talk about when I had the opportunity to talk to Bill Kehoe on the strategy layer.
So yes, love the name of the podcast too.
Thank you. Well, I'm
all
a
about
fan
strategy. All about strategy.
I love coffee and I love leadership, so I'm a fan of the Coffee with Kehoe work as well.
All right. Yes, we need all the fans we can get. That's great.
Yeah. So, getting started here, I've shared a few notes with you, and I've just outlined, some topics, and what I want to do over the next hour or so is just kind of, turn back the hands of time and look at your leadership, how you got into public service, and maybe even before that, I know that you're into running, and so I'd like to talk about that as well. But your journey in public service. I mean, you've led technology organizations at the state, county, and local level, and I just want to know, like, from you, what first drew you into public service, and what's kept you there for so many chapters of your career?
Well, I think what first drew me in is, right out of college, I was a civilian engineer for the Navy. So I started in public service right away. And then from there, I went into kind of a consultant role for software development for Department of Licensing. And ended up staying there for 20 years, becoming a permanent employee. And I think what I like about public service is that you're serving your state, you're serving the people in your state, and you're trying to make things better for people. And that's always drawn me to public service, is that service aspect. It gets me up in the morning, it gets me excited. It's like, what can I do to make things better for the people of Washington State in this case? Or if I'm in county government, for the people in King County or LA County, whatever it is. We need strong governments. We do. And we need strong leadership in government. And there's not a lot of people that may be attracted to that, but that's always been a real inspiration for me. I think being a public servant is an extremely honorable profession, if you will. And I've just been honored in all the places I've been to do the things that I've been able to do.
And when you talk about first getting into the Department of Licensing, that's in Washington or California?
Yeah. The DMV of Washington is called, we changed the name to protect, the DMV perception, I think.
Right. When you look at what's happening in, at the state and federal level, it makes you appreciate strong leadership in government a lot more.
It really does.
When you know that, when you see and feel what it's like to not have it versus to have it, I'll say it makes me really grateful to live in Washington. Yeah.
We need strong leaders in everything, but in government, it's really important because there's so many things that we could do to improve the lives of the people we serve here, and you got to have that strategic vision. You got to be a change agent in many ways. And you got to have that strength of leadership to make things happen.
When you look back at the different stages, so you've mentioned the licensing, there's King County, you spent some time in Los Angeles, and WaTech now. Besides, serving residents, what has been the through line that connects them to you, connects those career paths for you?
I think there's always so much to do in technology. And I'm very big on technology strategy and how technology can be an enabler for the programs and policies and the departments and agencies that are within, whether it's county government or state government. And that's the line that has been challenging for me, is how can I become a strategic partner with the business side or the policy side or the program side of government and really show them how technology can be an enabler to help them be successful. Because a lot of times what we have to overcome is that technology is often thought of as that back office magic that happens. But throughout my career, I've been a proponent of, no, we need a strategic partnership where technology and technology leaders are at the table with the executives, helping them create strategy, showing them how technology can enable them to be more successful. Because that's what the private sector does.
Since this is the strategy layer, by layers, you'll notice that it's about strategy, governance, people, and technology. So this isn't a technology podcast, but being able to connect the dots and view all the layers, you've just mentioned them. And
strategy is multifaceted. Technology's got to be a piece because everything's automated today in some form.
Well, not only a piece, but I've heard it said from other, some mentors and leaders that I've had and look up to, who have gone right out and said that technology is an implementation detail, meaning that you have to have the right belief system, the right policy. There's a lot that comes before what you're actually doing in what technology you choose, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, technology is a piece, but I think what we're trying to train and educate our more business executives that maybe aren't technology savvy is that they can't be afraid of that partnership, and that it will help them eventually implement their programs and serve their customers in a better way.
So what's one project or moment that still feels like a turning point when you realized you were doing more than running IT? You were shaping how government serves people.
Oh, that's an easy one. I would say at the Department of Licensing, Governor Locke came in and had a digital government vision, which was way ahead of his time. I still think of him as the digital governor in many ways. And what he said when he came in is, I want to put these 4 transactions which exist in offices today online. And he mentioned vehicle tab renewal, vessel tab renewal, business licensing, and I think it was driver's licensing as well. And at the time, it was like we were on mainframes. We weren't taking credit cards in field offices. And we were like, wow, that's great, but how are we going to do this?
You didn't want to connect the mainframe to the internet?
Well, we had to. That's what we did.
Yeah.
And we went from that vision, which I think all great leaders need to have that vision, right? And he challenged us not to come to him with all the reasons why we couldn't do it, but how we were going to do it, which has been a huge lesson for me throughout my career, right? Is you can do incredible things if you have the belief and you can get people inspired to do it. And we went from that vision to actually implementing that over time to now what is at the Department of Licensing, 40, 50, 60 online transactions, taking credit cards, transacting with government, all year long, 24/7. And that was a huge turning point for me because I was kind of the project manager. I was a lead over our vehicle and vessel licensing program, and I participated in some of the development even of that project. So I was, and we worked, we were like a startup e-commerce company to pull that project off. And we had to communicate with multiple mainframes, put a brand new front end on the, so our residents could.
We're writing connectors between COBOL and Java?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
And we did it.
Well,
and so that was a huge turning point for me. And I've just taken that lesson and that vision and that strategy that Governor Locke came in, and I've tried to emulate that wherever I've been.
Well, I don't think anybody likes standing in line at a DMV, so...
No.
Right. So that's pretty transformational.
Or paying with a check or cash.
I think that's a great legacy story to say your parents used to have to stand in line at a DMV, and I made it so they didn't have to do that. And then I was also part of the enhanced driver's license program. We were first in the nation to implement an enhanced driver's license. And we did it with RFID technology, communicating with Homeland Security, so that it wasn't just a driver's license, but it was something you could take across the border in Canada and others. So that was an incredibly interesting project as well. So I just feel fortunate that I was in DOL at that time and being able to participate in those projects. Very cool. It's like you could see, juggling. It's a juggling act. You're satisfying multiple stakeholders, very complex computing environments, policy, security, and so forth.
Yeah. And getting in on the ground floor, seeing the politics and how that all worked out with different governments, the federal government involved, and seeing how our DOL director at the time, Liz Luce, navigated that so well, and just learning from that as well was incredible.
Before we get going too far through your highlights in your career, one of the things I've appreciated about getting to know you is your background in running and as a coach. And so you've spent years coaching runners and athletes. Curious to know how you think about that today, and what have you learned about motivation and teamwork that's carried into your leadership approach?
Yeah, I would say that my personal running, really gave me a foundation of discipline and sense of accomplishment. Because I approach running like I do my profession, which is I challenge myself to do things that maybe, people would say, you can't run that fast in a marathon, right? And I like to do that in my personal and professional life.
And you actually ran in the Boston Marathon, I recognize. So that's
so my goal when I was running marathons was to run a marathon in under 6 minutes per mile pace. And at the time, my 10K time wasn't, because I'm not the fastest runner, but mine was like 34 something or 35, and it's like doesn't compute. But I found trail running. I found just the right training style that I needed to build up to a marathon, and I was able to do it one time, get under 6 minutes, and then I used that to qualify for Boston. So I was fairly close up at the starting line, and it's just an incredible experience. But it sports or art or whatever it is, it teaches you discipline. It keeps your mind sharp. It teaches you strategy, time management, goal setting.
Nutrition.
Yeah. Yes. Although I probably could have done better in that area. But all of that I think is the foundation then for leadership. And then I went from my own running career to coaching, which was way more fulfilling in so many ways. I got to coach my kids, and then I would coach for 11 years, cross country and track, and just enjoyed it. Teenagers.
That's not easy.
Yeah, boys and girls.
I have one of those, and she has quite an opinion these days.
Yes. But I will tell you that a lot of my leadership that I learned through coaching teenagers.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's why I brought this up.
I apply today.
Like, how did coaching influence how you build teams and develop leaders inside of your organizations and coach adults now?
Yeah. Well, kids are great because they know when you're not sincere. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing I learned is like you got to be really sincere. You got to show them you care. You got to build trust, and you got to do that in the workplace too. And so there's that people aspect. I think for me, it was less about the sport and about how to develop each kid, because each kid is different. Each athlete's different in their needs. So that's one thing I took away. It's like every person that reports to me is different. And I have to understand what that is, what makes them tick, right? I was also able to develop them not just athletically, but in goal setting and strategy. So I would always sit down with them each of them at the beginning of the year and say, okay, what are our goals as a team? Where do we want to be at the end of the year? Mm-hmm. And how can you help us get there? And what are your goals? And we set those goals, and a lot of it was, I want to run this fast, I want us to win state or whatever it was. And I said, well, okay, well, if that's what you want, then we got to work at that.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to train hard. Are you ready to do that? So there was a challenge there. But to see the kids go from that goal setting and strategy and team building to actually accomplishing those goals, and both at the team level, because we got to the point where we were winning state, and watching them go through that and seeing the confidence and the identity they built, that then some of them went on to college and ran, and it just, how it really impacted their lives, that's the greatest satisfaction. And that's what I try to apply in my leadership.
I love it. And so, that leads us into, the preparing for long races and your own experience and coaching others and transformation, going from like competing at a high school level to doing so in the collegiate field is a totally different level of game.
Right.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit now about a project that I was very fortunate to be a part of. And
thank you.
I had a fairly, I believe after 15 years, I hit the height of what I would consider success as an architect in enterprise identity and access management. And I kind of hit the eject button on my own career and started doing startups and podcasts and other side projects. And
that's a leap of faith and confidence there. Congrats.
It was maybe not confidence until the last couple of years, but it was initially, faith and desperation for something different, because I didn't want year 16 to look like the previous 15 years.
Yeah. But
what I can tell you, connecting my experience to yours, when I was approached, I think in late 2021, by a I won't name names, but by someone who is looking to fill a role on your team as a business analyst to help modernize consumer and resident IAM. My first reaction was like, I don't want to get involved in like the state services. And, I looked at it, I listened, I had a conversation with your CTO at the time. And I was like, yeah, I've done all of those things. And I'm, all the while asking like, but why should I, I was working my way through an MBA and, I was like balancing some things and I would have to make an adjustment. But getting into, my first exposure of modernization of resident IAM for Washington State, reading the charter, it talks about digital equity. And it took a little bit for me to think about and think through what digital equity and identity and access management means. Because coming from the private sector, you think more about stakeholders and end users and not equity, right? So this, I want to turn back, and I guess you probably think about equity a lot, not just for a certain project, but
every day.
But the idea of making government as seamless as Amazon Prime was a fairly bold vision and direction to lead. Where does that come from, and how did you manage to bring others along on? You have a 10-year legacy platform that you're trying to replace or migrate, right? Mm-hmm. How do you sell that vision?
Well, I think the vision really is started with this concept of connected government, mm-hmm. and that everywhere I've been, governments, departments, and agencies have been somewhat siloed. Mm-hmm. And what that creates is an unequitable experience for our residents, because they have to try to find which agency website to go to, or mm-hmm. how to get services that they desperately need for themselves or their families. And government has never been connected like it should. So I kind of started with my executive team, and every year I do a theme. And so I'm over the holidays, I'm thinking about, okay, what's our strategy and theme going to be for this upcoming year? And I think it was 2022 or 23. I said, I want to do a connected government theme, because I've been talking about this resident portal, and I don't know that it's resonated, and I want to be the Amazon Prime of Washington, and people go, oh, you can't do that. It's that's $1 billion company. Mm-hmm. It's like, mm-hmm. well, the concept, okay, the concept. So it started with that connected government, and then from there we had projects emerge like Resident Portal and the Customer Identity and Access Management. It was an easy strategic vision, because you just have to look at what our residents have to go through in some cases to get the services they need. They don't want to do business with agencies that have acronyms they don't understand or org charts that they need to memorize. They want to do business with the state of Washington. And we have an obligation from an equity perspective to reach all our residents, not a small portion. And we have to design to meet all of our residents' needs where they are.
Well, a couple of things that stand out from an equity perspective that, in looking back, I remember something like 80 or 90% of all of the logins were either shared or duplicate logins. Right. And so people have to remember multiple logins.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, Google was the way that users would search for the right agency to go to. And a lot of help desk calls that were coming in were related to login issues. And then there's also the cognitive and visual impairments that, if you don't think about equitable design of a user interface, people with vision impairments might not find it as easy to log in or to even find what they're looking for. So, are there, maybe one or two examples or just an example of a use case that you were especially interested in solving, going from the conceptual to a concrete problem that you're trying to solve?
Well, it's several. We have Secure Access Washington today. Mm-hmm. It's been with us for 20 years, and it's past its prime. It's not a teenager anymore. It's time to retire Secure Access Washington. Mm-hmm. So that was when I first got to the state as the state CIO, one of the first calls I got from an agency was, you got to do something about this. And it's like, okay. Mm-hmm. And what do we have planned? Nothing. So we were able to take that vision of what started out as kind of separate projects like Resident Portal and Identity, and it became very obvious, no, these go together.
Yes.
And it's our way to get away from Secure Access Washington, which does not have the accessibility that we need, and build something that's very accessible, user-friendly, and presents one face of government to our residents. Mm-hmm. So there's multiple use cases there, but we can't serve 25% of our residents if they're not accessible. If we don't have accessible user interfaces. And so we're doing something about that. I'm very proud of that, how much accessibility is part of our strategy, how we think about that in everything that we do. And there's something that I heard that really resonated with me. It's like we design with our residents, not for our residents. Because oftentimes in government, what we did is we said, we know what they need, so but this is what they need. Yeah. And we can't do that. That's not equity.
I got to see that firsthand when I was in this project, supporting you and your team. I was telling some of my friends and, folks that run businesses here in Washington State saying, that's cool. SAW sucks. Can you fix it? I'm like, I'm working on it. I'm helping and I'm doing my part. Right. So as a reformed technologist, what I can say, Bill, is that solving this on paper with technology is the easy part.
Yeah.
But getting the agencies together to agree is hard. So
it's very hard.
With the CIAM and the resident portal, it's become, now, Okta and other companies and other states are interested in the work that you've done, and they're asking me questions. And so I wonder, in retrospect, what has, from your point of view, what was the hardest part of turning that vision into reality?
It's always hard in government to get everyone on the same page from a statewide perspective. But you have to be that conduit between, hey, here's the problem today, here's a proposed solution, and here's how you can engage with this, and here's the value to your agency and to the state and to our residents. So you have to be that communicator, that leader that's willing to step into that space and say, we're not doing this the right way. We can do it better. And here's the plan. But it doesn't happen overnight. You got to keep at it. So we included agency representatives in our steering committees. They helped us shape the vision and the design. And then we had a lot of, organizational change management that we put in practice as well. And so now we introduced, hey, SAW's going away, because we've announced SAW's going away. It's like, okay, well, this is what's going to take its place, the resident portal, CIAM. And so let's all work together to make this happen.
And I've witnessed firsthand how, the dragon's breath can be, in the room or even, down the back of your neck. And I've seen how you respond, and you're fairly calm under pressure. I think you have, given your experience, and it's not your first rodeo, I have nothing but, admiration for the way you approach conflicting points of view. And, I think your presence is always, isn't always seen, but it's felt, right? And like maybe what would Bill think, or if you're in the room, you weigh in. But I don't see it as being something that's domineering. You're like coaching rather than directing, which is great.
There's ways to bring people along, and there's ways that you should not bring people along. I think you're always going to have the outliers that don't want to come along no matter what. And so that conversation, might be a little different than someone who's kind of on the edge and just needs to understand what's in it for them, the value for their customers, and where you're going. And it takes patience. You got to listen and try to understand what their concerns are from their perspective.
Well, you introduced an idea which I practiced for most of my career, but you introduced it in the public sector, and I first heard you talk about this on a podcast about modernizing without ripping and replacing. And I think you leveraged that idea to present modernization in a way that's not scary for those who feel like they're just you're going to rip out their current infrastructure and force them to use a new technology platform.
Yes. Modernization has evolved in a really good way over the years. It used to be just a term that said, I'm going to replace my mainframe or I'm going to replace my legacy system. And the problem with that is it didn't take into account the customer experience, the front end. It didn't take into account, in many cases, the business process change that needs to occur. It didn't take into account data and data analytics. That's a big part of modernization. Or an integration architecture to the back-end services. It was always, let's rip out this system that's old and replace it with something new, which introduces so much risk and time that's why a lot of projects fail in government. You can't take that time anymore. Everything's incremental. You've got to get something in the hands of your customers quickly. And so modernization is always it's about incremental, agile development. It's about thinking about your customers first and getting the front end piece right, and then integrating on the back end while you're also changing business processes. And then eventually you can decommission your legacy systems, but that's usually the last thing you do.
And let's shift gears just a minute. So we've talked about the the back office. We've talked about your team and a board level internal or insider view of innovation and modernization. But having participated and also been an observer to your work and your leadership, I think one thing that's really fascinating, Bill, is you not only take this push and challenge and towards innovation and impact, right? I just think of this as about you're running towards impact. And that's what I've titled this episode, is that, running towards impact with Bill Kehoe. You've also taken into the public sphere, and on numerous occasions, you've introduced innovation in procurement and public-private collaboration, for the Resident Portal Challenge, for example. And on numerous occasions, you've presented your ideas in public forums about almost how the ecosystem and vendors need to collaborate, and also how your procurement needs to become simplified because we're all working towards this impact. So you've not only gained your team going towards the mission, but you've also gained the vendors and the community and the ecosystem going towards the same objectives, and that's broadened your influence. So I wonder, how did engaging with industry and community partners change this outcome compared to, say, a traditional RFP?
Yeah, the competitive procurement is something I really believe in as kind of where we need to go in government as the future of procurement. Maybe not with everything, but the beauty of that is it simplifies what is traditionally a very long and arduous RFP process, not only for us that are in government that are creating the RFP, but also industry having to respond to an RFP. The trouble with that RFP model is that we're telling industry how to do it. And they're responding to our requirements, many of which they go, that's a really bad requirement. Why are they doing it that way? But competitive procurement lets industry and all the smart people that are passionate about supporting government and our residents, lets them innovate around a challenge statement. I love that, because you've got all these bright people in these companies saying, hey, that's cool. I think we can innovate around that. What we saw is they would go into conference rooms with teams, and they would whiteboard the solution. They would respond to this online application. And it even had a video that they would create. They had fun with it. And we just received so many great bids and vendors we never would have done business with because of the far-reaching aspect of this. So it's a model that works. We just haven't really, embraced it yet, because procurement's all around competitive, fair, which you can still do, but it's a little risky to some that have been traditional procurement over the years.
I am a data nerd, and I think one of the things that I had the opportunity to do during the CIAM, the resident IM evaluation and procurement, was to build a data-driven approach to help you evaluate the market and the vendors. And this was my first foray into public service, and one of the largest vendors here in Washington State would be, the incumbent and the presumed provider for resident IM. But with a data-driven approach, this is the competitiveness that you introduced and the transparency that it allowed you to demonstrate internally to your stakeholders and to the vendors that we have a fair and a transparent process. That the outcome was kind of surprising to me, because the vendor who won was like in fourth place. And I think it was because of one merger of one of the companies that opened up a spot for them, and then they ended up winning. And I can attest that this was through fair and transparent means.
Yeah. I think we're in an age where we are multi-vendor, best of breed. We have to be.
Yes.
Right. All the vendors that participated had really good solutions. And we had very good selection criteria, proof of concepts, et cetera. And it was very fair. So there wasn't any like pre-notion that one vendor was going to be the selected vendor. They all had a shot.
Yeah, they did. And I published that, and you have a team and resources that, everything was shared. Some of them, didn't like the way it was approached, and all I could do was like put it out there and then observe, and it's just interesting to see how you and your team respond to that with tact and sticking to your approach, which was a lesson in leadership. And I think this was why I wanted to call it out in this episode. And
there's so many aspects to a selection. It's not just about the project itself. It's about the platforms. It's about the technology. It's about the architecture and the sustainability, because we want solutions that are sustainable for the long term. Not something we have to replace in 5 or 10 years, that can scale, that can do all the things that we need, especially when you're talking about serving millions of people in the state of Washington. And then there's the operational side of that and the support side. So there's so many, and it's not just one vendor anymore. What I always encourage is partnerships across competition to better serve government. That's what we need. We need what traditionally may be strong competitors to come together.
Yeah.
For the sake of serving our residents and giving us the best possible solution. And I really believe in that as the future of what we need.
Well, I think that conviction has served you well, and has served the residents of your team, and ultimately the residents of Washington State. And as one of them, I thank you for that. So, and peeling back, the layers even further, I wrote a book on the CISO on the razor's edge, and I'm grateful.
Great book.
Grateful that you've had a chance to review it. And there's one area, your first feedback for me was one I think that was well received and deserves to talk a lot more about, which is the partnership between the CIO and the Chief Information Security Officer. And since you're not a Chief Information Security Officer, cybersecurity leadership isn't limited to the CISO in the room. And you rightfully pointed out that, or you called to my attention that if there was a data breach in Washington State, you would be the first person that was called.
So absolutely.
I wonder, right, like when you're sharing this responsibility, from the perspective of cybersecurity, incident response, what does that level of partnership and accountability mean to you as the CIO?
Yeah, it's essential. I'm the front lines for everything that happens, good or bad, right? And I don't put that on my CISO or my privacy officer. Of course, if there's an incident, then one or both of them are very involved. But really, my responsibility as a CIO for the state of Washington is to ensure that I'm very involved in all aspects of cybersecurity and that I understand the privacy principles and the privacy concepts that we should be following and the policy around that. And so I stay very involved in cybersecurity, especially given that it only takes one incident that could affect the entire state and shut the state down. And, at that point, it's like it's not a matter of whose fault it is. It's a matter of we never want that to occur. And so we always have to be assessing and designing and making sure we have the proper controls. And for us as a federated IT state, we have to pull all of our agencies into that discussion. And we all have to be one team combating cybersecurity and the threats that are out there, which are getting more sophisticated every day, whether it's phishing or AI, whatever it is, they're there and they're getting harder and harder to combat. So think about phishing, the sophistication now with AI.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And deep fakes.
And trying to now, it used to be, oh yeah, there was misspellings and you could tell by the URL. Now it's very difficult, and with AI, they can actually spear phish you by understanding a lot about you and your social media, and then creating these tailored email messages that set you up.
And are very, they're more convincing than ever. I mean, you could speak very little English and have an accent, but when you use ChatGPT to compose a email correspondence, those things disappear.
Yeah. So I'm just not one to say, well, I'm not the CISO, so that's your job. Good luck.
Well,
because I know the governor's office, if we had an incident, they'd be calling me.
Right.
And they don't want to hear, well, I don't know, that's not my job, that's my CISO's job. That's you don't say that. So I have to be leading and involved and understand the direction and provide direction in all of our programs, so that I'm aware and because I consider myself accountable and responsible for everything that goes on in my agency and in technology in the state.
Well, you've shown your ability to, at times I thought, man, does Bill, does he understand? Is he aware of what's happening right now in this room? And, at times when you weren't in the room, and I wrote about the tale of two CISOs in my book, and that one of those tales may or may not be based upon my experience in working with your team. And what I saw happen was that you actually, originally we had thought and conceived of improving security of resident IAM through identity proofing and verification that, almost fell through the cracks. And I think, seeing how you're working with your privacy officer and with your team that, at one point it was below the line, and then, something, I'm not in every conversation. I don't know what happened or what was said, but you saved, I think, a vulnerable implementation of modernization by doing whatever you did. And I think it was important for you to have that oversight, even though you're not the chief information security officer. So this has helped. I see this in a lot of places, but we can't limit our definition of cybersecurity leadership to CISOs.
Not at all. Security is horizontal. It's not vertical across our organizations. And we all have a role to play. And really, our employees are the first line of defense, right? If they're not educated, if they're not aware of good security practices, good privacy practices, then we're in trouble.
So, Bill, I have two more, time permitting. It's 2:35. I want to talk about your reflections about your legacy, And then, time permitting, about AI and the future of leadership. So, I'm just thinking, like, looking back, I know in the beginning you talked about your experiences at DOL as a highlight, but, is there, what are you most proud of, not just in terms of technology, but in how you've led?
I think for me, it's not backing away from any challenge, taking on the tough stuff, which is what I like to say to my teams. It's like, we got to take on the tough stuff. Don't kick the problem down the road for the next person. And you got to have a team that embraces that, because we've taken on, wherever I've been, we've taken on some really tough things, like consolidating IT in King County. That's a tough thing. Mm-hmm. But it's still there today, is King County information technology, and doing very well. But that consolidation of what was traditionally a very federated IT in King County, and then trying to lead that charge of not only consolidating IT, but creating a service catalog and rates, and that had never been there, placing people from department IT into now central IT into services.
So now you have to learn accounting.
Oh, I'll tell you what, you talk about CISOs all day. Your best friend is your CFO.
Mm-hmm. I write about that too in the book, about the partnership with the CFO.
Oh yeah, the CFO. I've been just so fortunate to have great strategic CFOs, and I could never have done what I've done in my career without.
That sounds like maybe some an uncommon or unusual advice, but what do you hope this next generation of leaders learns from your approach to service and leadership?
That it's a great career, and it's very gratifying, mm-hmm. serving the public, and it gets you up every day and gets you excited. And I found that there are always incredibly challenging projects and initiatives if you're bold enough to set a vision with your teams and then communicate that, and then create projects and initiatives that move that strategy forward. There's opportunity there for other people to get involved in public service and make a difference. Mm-hmm. And when you look back on your career, what's more important than that, So, yeah.
Well, what's on the horizon, Bill? And, as you look at your legacy in WATEC and in public service, what's on the horizon for you? And
well, I mean, it seems like every day there's a new challenge, right? Now I'm very involved in our One Washington project, and just having a lot of really good time there, trying to get that project across the finish line, mm-hmm. With our ERP solution. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of need right now for continued leadership and leaning in and trying to make things successful.
So we talked a little bit about AI, and in closing, I'm just wondering, how has the rise of AI, not just from a cybersecurity and vulnerability perspective, but how has it changed the way that you and your leaders think about responsibility and decision-making and trust in government? Anyone can type up a memo or a charter with ChatGPT, but not everyone can come up with digital equity for residents.
Mm-hmm. We've approached AI, I think, in a really good way, where we didn't rush to, hey, let's find a problem and apply AI. Mm-hmm. We've trying to build a foundation. I think Katie Ruckel and Nick Stowe, they were kind of our leaders in WATEC and with the state around putting together some guidelines, bringing agencies together with a community of practice, responding to the Governor Inslee's executive order around AI, looking at risk and bias and workforce training, et cetera. He did a great job with that. And now we're trying to say, okay, we have these guardrails, we have a foundation, let's build a strategy, and let's start to innovate, but not innovate for innovate's sake with AI, but actually try to incorporate AI like into our resident portal and our identity and access management. So existing projects, so we're not like searching for something to use AI for, because I think that's a mistake a lot of organizations make with any kind of emerging technology. It's like, let's go find a problem. No, there's enough projects and everything else that we're doing here. Let's find a way to use AI to make us more efficient, but in a very safe way. Let's not expose our residents' data. And let's make sure we know the models that we're using and that they don't have bias, and we know the risk involved. So
I love that. Yeah.
It's probably slower than some other organizations are approaching AI, but I feel good about the way we're doing it.
Well, I had a really good conversation with Katie about the bias and the regulations in AI on a previous podcast. But I guess just in closing, like, as AI continues to evolve, and I think that having a foundation and guardrails is a good start to your strategy. But now there are chatbots and autonomous agents, and I'm currently working on digital twins. I just wonder, like, what is the best possible outcome for, like, there's a lot of layoffs happening in the private sector. I don't know how that's affecting you and your team, but what's the best possible outcome that you could see from leadership and human resources and outcomes for residents in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think AI is going to make us way more efficient. Agentic AI, and which really is kind of incorporates robotic process automation, but in a grander scale. So a lot of our business processes and tasks that are very manual, like within contracting and other, I think we're going to find that AI is just going to take off in terms of transforming our business processes, and it should, within the guardrails that we have. So I think it's going to transform that. I think where I think AI is really going to help us is industry is incorporating into everything they do. And we're going to use our industry partners. We're not going to, in many cases, create these AI solutions ourselves, but we're going to create efficiencies in how we engage with residents by incorporating what industry has built into their products and services. I'm excited about that, and it's going to increase the partnership with industry.
When you're out of office or personal time off, light goes on your email, is Bill Bot going to appear and answer questions to your staff?
I will tell you that with all the emails I get and all the documents I have to review, and when it comes to legislation that we have to keep track of and review, AI is going to be huge.
Do you have a virtual chief of staff yet?
No. And I don't want to say that too loudly, or my chief of staff.
I've already been talking to her about it. Not to replace her though.
Yeah, that's right.
To make her more efficient.
So it's gonna make us all more efficient.
Yeah.
If used in the right way, right.
Well, Bill, this has been an amazing conversation, and I think my patience has paid off. I'm so grateful for your
Thank
time
you so much.
And to be able to walk through your career and explore leadership and all of the facets that it entails. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been great.